So this is an update on the upcoming eclipse on July 27th. That eclipse is in Capricorn, and it's joined Mars and Ketu. So this eclipse, which will be coming, will be big. And there will be people joining this live class here, or this live update. So I'll wait a little bit for some people to show up. But we're experiencing a lot of this Mars Ketu energy, a lot of this Capricorn energy. We also have Jupiter direct in Libra. So we're certainly in the midst of intense weather. And this period between eclipses is always a time when things shift, and they shift rapidly, and we can feel those shifts now. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about politics, of course, but definitely we see a lot of political changes in the world, especially recently with two of the most important world powers meeting. That would be the US President Trump and Putin, after meeting with all those world leaders in Europe, in the EU, and just the kind of shakeup that happened around that, and even more kind of changes with other countries. We've had a massive heat wave in Japan, but also in many parts of the world. And so we can see that heat wave as shown by this exact Ketu-Mars conjunction. Heat wave is definitely related to Mars and Ketu, those two planets coming together. And the sun getting close to being eclipsed. Again, whenever the sun joins one of the nodes, we have the eclipse, and that definitely exacerbates those qualities of the sun, which is, of course, the planet of light and heat. So we see the chart here. This is July 23rd, which is when I'm making the video. And we have this Mars at 11 Capricorn, Ketu also at 11 Capricorn. Jupiter is in Libra, which shows this focus on social causes, our interactions with our own, again, with our own culture, with our own government, with our own ethics, morals, values, not to mention the ethics, morals, values on the global scale, like internationally. I said this a couple weeks ago when Jupiter went into when Jupiter started moving direct again, that it would bring a real focus on social causes, and we'd see those things moving forward again. We would see some shifting going on where we'll have to really reckon with the kind of world we want, the kind of society we want, the kind of culture we want. And we also, see with this Mars in Capricorn, this exalted Mars joined Ketu in Capricorn, there's a very sort of rigid kind of opinions and fighting nature, where we're very much sort of backed into a corner, boxed into a corner, boxed into our kind of silo where we think our side is right, and if someone is not on our side, then they are sort of against us. So even, for example, with the recent summits that the president of the U.S. undertook, he was protested all over England, massive protests against him and whatnot. He was, even in the United States, he's pretty massively unpopular in general, but with his supporters, they're just as dug in and just as convinced that he is right as they've ever been. They're sort of dug into their position. And that's what you see with this Mars in Capricorn energy. This is one of the things that happens with Mars in Capricorn, is we get sort of in the fight, which is Mars, for the long haul. So we're in that Mars fight for the long haul, and again, this is one of the reasons why Mars is exalted in Capricorn. It's exalted in Capricorn because rather than just fighting for smaller victories impulsively here and there, when Mars is in Capricorn, we're in it for the long haul, and we're in it to win it. And the way that we win is by staying committed to the fight. Now, again, that can be good in one sense, of course, but it depends on what we're trying to win. One of the problems is that we can be just dug into a position, but not willing to adjust to new information, willing to change course, willing to be flexible. And those are the qualities of Mercury, the planet that comes later. So the planet that comes after Mars tends to take that fighting spirit and bring more intelligence to it. The power of having a strong Mars is that we're willing to fight and we show up for the fight. Mars just gives us the courage to fight, the fighting nature, the courage, the willingness to fight. So when Mars becomes, powerful, you would say, we're ready to fight and we're willing to fight and we're in the fight for the long haul. We're in it to win it, so to speak, because in Capricorn, we're not going to give up. And we're also more strategic, because the longer we stay in one fight, the better fighter we become, because we learn that particular fight rather than just swinging at every windmill that comes by, rather than just fighting randomly at everything. We find the cause that's worth fighting for and we stay with it. So this is why it's one of the hardest things to do in life is to get people to change their mind over something, especially something that they believe in, something that they're willing to fight for. This is why, like, for example, to use a political example, it's very easy that if someone just does it, if someone is against a particular politician or a particular cause, they will try as hard as possible to maintain consistency with their past actions to resist change. So, for example, even if people thought that what, let's say, what President Trump just did when he met with Putin and stood there and said, no, the US intelligence agencies are wrong. I don't believe them. I believe Putin. Even people that voted for him must have a hard time seeing that. But our mind will find a way to go, well, but maybe. And it's just so that we can maintain a consistent self-image. So again, this is how we can get really dug into our sort of little silos, just in general. It's one of the reasons why it's very hard to change people's minds. And when people get dug into their positions, it's very hard to make progress. So there's a lot of that now. People are very polarized and very dug into their positions. And again, one of the things that happens, it's very tempting to think that the guna, with Mars being tamasic, and in Capricorn, which is also tamasic, that it's bad, that it's a bad thing. And again, these are just feelings. These are feelings and emotions, and they're hard to hold. The tamasic emotion is hard because we feel the anger. It's not a fun emotion. It's anger and frustration. But in a spiritual sense, it's that energy which makes us strong and tough and makes us transform that anger, because it's hard to deal with it on that emotional level, into something physical. So then we start to move physically and start to move that energy. And when we move that energy, then it elevates, and the anger becomes more disciplined. And especially if we know what we're fighting for, and we're fighting for something worthwhile, let's say in a spiritual sense, we're fighting for our liberation and to be a powerful individual. And I mean a powerful individual in a dharmic sense, to find the nature of self and to be courageous to fight that fight against our own weaknesses and insecurities. We need a strong Mars to do that. And many times, the reason, I wouldn't say many times, but every time, no one will fight that spiritual fight naturally. What we naturally do is fight others externally. That's what we naturally do. So Mars, in some sense, never really feels good until, in itself, it's that intensity, until we start to move physically and feel that heat and even pain and discomfort moving through our body, and then feeling that pain and discomfort leading to strength. That's when Mars feels good. Mars feels good when we're strong. And we usually don't get strong until after we've overcome some kind of resistance, which is the tamas, which is the tamasic nature. So it's very easy to just get screwed up around what tamasic energy is. Again, that resistance that we have to push against is what makes us strong. And when we're pushing against it, it doesn't feel good. It's hard. But the tamasic planets, Mars and Saturn, make us work to do it anyway, because we want to get the result. We want to be strong. We want to be powerful. We want to know the nature of the truth in the highest sense. In a lower sense, we think, when we're delusional, we think that the thing that's going to make us strong is by fighting external battles with people. And again, this is why most people aren't very spiritual. And Mars and Saturn energy, but Mars creates this illusion that me being strong is the same thing as me defeating you, me getting mad at you, me yelling at you, me fighting with you. That's what makes me strong. That's how it usually feels to us. And again, what happens is, after getting defeated over and over again, or even winning and having that also feel like a defeat because it doesn't matter if we win usually. Having that over and over again, losing over and over again in those external struggles make us keen to the higher struggle. And that's the power of the tamasic energy, is the power, the courage, the willingness to fight past that resistance and that pain and that unpleasantness to get to the truth. Because the truth is going to be painful to your soul. Your soul wants things to be easy. I'm sorry, your ego and your mind and your emotions want things to be easy. So you gravitate toward things that are easy, that's rajasic, because you're hoping it'll be nice and uplifting, which is sattvic, and it's not, because your normal default state is rajasic, wanting to be happy, with a lot of resistance and pain blocking the path. So this is a lot of what's happening right now. Is I've been saying this for a while, is it's really a time for you to face your weakness, your emotional weakness, your emotional immaturity. Learn how to fight the good fight and to battle and to not just try to be happy and expect that, well, it feels bad, so it's bad, so when's it going to stop? And all of that is what makes this difficult. Other than that, there's really nothing any more difficult than anything else. In fact, there's enormous potential for growth now. But we can just see in the world how just crazy things are, especially how paradigm shifting things are right now. This is eclipse energy. It's getting our sense of will and purpose and willingness and ability to, fight back and make a difference is being questioned. And a lot of what we're doing now, or a lot of what we're bumping up against, is this idea of what are we willing to fight for? And what are we realizing is beyond our ability to change? Or how can we use the energy we have to change what we can change? Just getting frustrated and angry and lashing out is being revealed as something that's just a waste of time and energy. So now is the time for you to really be aware of this and keen to this. And again, it also implicates things like, well, if I can't change something, then should I just not do anything? Should I just totally ignore it, totally turn my back, and totally shrink from the fight? We can use the political one as a good example. Depending on whatever side of the fight you're on in geopolitics or whatever, or social, it doesn't even have to be politics, but social causes. We've been seeing so many stories, I have been, of things like there's been quite a bit of things on the news about, like, plastic and the need for recycling and what we're doing to the planet and this global warming that we're going through now with all the record temperatures. It's, do we just give up? Well, I can't do anything, so I'm just not going to think about it. Or do we have to, or can we summon the courage to do what we can and say what we can, but also realize that there are things out of our control? Certainly things like political fights and getting angry at those, how could people be so stupid as to not see that, this person is an idiot, or this politician is just lying to us, or this or that, and we get so angry and we just want to vent rather than, or the other choice is to just become apathetic. And when we do that, that's what leads to depression. That's what leads to depression. So you want to understand this about tamasic energy and especially Mars and Saturn energy. What happens is tamasic energy is basically anger and sadness, anger and depression, both of them, in their lowest sense, as psychological qualities, And when we're in situations, and if we don't have good control over our emotions, let's say that we're not this spiritual person, or in times when we're not being spiritual, we're not transforming it, and we're getting depressed and worried, it's because we don't have the power to change the thing externally, which is Mars. So when we feel powerless to change the thing, it's Mars that makes us irritable and angry and want to do something to change it. Then we keep trying to do something to change it over and over again. And when that doesn't work, we give up. That leads to depression, which is the Saturn energy. And then we become afraid to engage, because fear is another tamasic quality. And again, fear is just a catalyst. Fear can make us fearless. Again, fear is the negative quality of Saturn. Fearlessness is the positive quality of Mars. They're both tamasic energies, and they both work hand in hand with each other. But what can happen is after we try to change something and we can't, then we become depressed about it. We feel stuck, which is the negative quality of Saturn. Then we become afraid to even think about that thing. We want to just push it away. And then that fear becomes an aversion. Fear also can descend into depression. Our fears. But our fears can also be a great catalyst for facing our fears courageously, which is Mars. So this is how tamasic energy really converges. Fear and anger work together this way. They're both emotions. You want to understand, they're both emotions. And we usually experience the planets through the emotion of it. That's all the natural status is of the benefics and the malefics. All of them are divine forces. They're all benevolent, all of them. But some of them feel in our consciousness very difficult and stressful. That's what the malefics are. But the malefics, Mars and Saturn, bring the power of tamas. Tamas is a power. It's a guna. It's one of the forces of life. And it gives us mastery over those negative qualities through embodying those themes. But if we don't, and if we can't embody those things that we think we've learned, then they overtake us, and we get overtaken by our fear and our anger. Then we're just going to be stuck in these external situations. So a lot of this is going on. The reason I'm talking about it a lot is because these are big issues right now. And we want to try to put some simplistic terms. One of the big things that I've been getting a lot of students, well, since Mars is retrograde, even though it's exalted, isn't it like it's debilitated? Plus it's with Ketu, so isn't it like it's debilitated? Again, we want to grasp for some word to put on it. Before anybody wants to do that, explain it. Let me hear you explain what you mean, and then that's fine. If you're just going to grasp for a word, don't bother. It's irrelevant. Explain Mars in Capricorn. Explain what Mars does in Capricorn, and explain the range of energy, and you will get the answer. Forget the word. Forget putting the label on it. The label is just going to, astrology students get stuck on these words too quickly. They get stuck on the word and they don't explain things, right? And again, it doesn't matter. I could go forever and never use exalted and debilitated. You're still talking about the full range of the energy there and this evolutionary process I'm talking about. That's always going to be at play with every planet in any sign. So right now, again, we're having a lunar eclipse, and I spent the whole time talking about Mars in Capricorn, Mars K2 in Capricorn, because this is where the ecliptic is right now. This is where the eclipse cycle is happening. And again, this backdrop of Jupiter in Libra, which has social, a lot of social causes. It really implicates us in trying to evaluate the world that we want to live in and our relationship with each other. And the realization that we have to live with each other, even those people who have these beliefs and hold these views that we can't imagine. And they might make us really angry. They're our brothers and sisters. Different races, different cultures. If that's the way you see it, maybe you don't see it that way. Maybe you see it as, no, white people are the good ones, or the brown people are the good ones, and everyone else is bad, or whatever. Again, these are all these Mars and Jupiter themes right now. So as we go forward and you see this eclipse, you see it happens. You see the exact degree around 10:30. Look, these are all within like 1 degree of each other. And that's about as exact as you could get, especially, that would be Mars, K2 moon, which is why the eclipse is happening, is like within 1 degree. And then Mars is within 1 degree of that. So you could see how explosive that is. And it could be quite explosive. Leading up to it, especially like on the 25th, 26th, 27th. And yeah, as I see that Dave Cherkusky has said that, yes, the retrograde internalizes the energy. So a lot of it is like internalized right now. And there's a real potential, especially with K2 also there, that it's like an implosive force, like where you could have these like emotional, psychological meltdowns right now with this internal Mars. It could literally be like insanity producing. And again, if someone doesn't have spiritual practice or spiritual awareness or know how to do meditation or really understand higher truth and evolution, then it can just make their mind crazy, really. But for yogis and disciplined people, it can be very powerful because it actually can give this, literally like this realization that I just talked about, which understands that we're not of this external world, that the internal fight, the internal struggle is the only one really worth fighting, that all the other ones ultimately are time wasting, energy wasting, and aren't making us strong. Every other fight that we get into, every other battle is a waste of time. But again, what that can do is make us then say, okay, I'm not going to fight anything. Then I'm going to just give up. But no, we still live in the world, and our heart still hurts when we see injustice. And we want to fight to fix those things that are not working. But yet we have to realize that this is the nature of the world, or this is the nature of a relationship, or however that fighting spirit is affecting us. It's just like as you see in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is trying to fight, and he's very attached to the victory or the loss or the fact that he's going to be killing people and all of this. And Krishna just says, no one is killed because no one was born. You're not the body. You're not this fight. All of this is my work. All of this is karma. It was their karma to fight. Your karma to engage them. And it's only your attachment to this limited world and your limited identity that's creating the suffering. In truth, there is nothing to suffer for. There is no suffering. No one is born. No one dies. No one is killing anybody. It's just you have this illusion and this attachment, and that's the problem. So again, in times like this, with all this intensity, those are the lessons. Again, you want to also understand, it's not just that, it's not a recommendation to say, well, you should just meditate. It's like this huge wave coming that sweeps you along. You either have to, you're either meditating and understanding these things on a higher level, or you're probably depressed and shut down and just fearful and cringing and frustrated and angry, which is showing you this side of yourself. And so when the intensity comes, the power to calm the intensity also comes. They exist at the same time and with the same intensity. Most of the time, things aren't as intense. That's why eclipses are so powerful for spiritual transformation. And you'll hear astrologers say this forever, all the time. Spiritual people say it. It's great for that, great for that, great for that. And nobody wants to meditate. And then once we get in once those moments start, then everyone's just like, oh my God, when's it going to stop? When's it going to stop? It's like, it's time for meditation. And it's time to see the chaos and the madness of the world. That's what it literally really means. That it really means meditation. Meditation and spiritual practice doesn't mean reading stuff or studying astrology or that. I mean, you can get great insights at those times because the nodes give a lot of insight, but it's meditation. That's what spiritual practice is. It's literally the practice. So I've definitely been doing a lot more of the spiritual practice. And that has really been a lot of where my energy has gone lately. Again, you can really think about it like a surfer and the wave, right? Because, surfers try to find the biggest wave. A surfer hopes to catch the biggest wave, but then in catching the biggest wave, here's a screenshot. I just posted this to my Instagram. That's exactly what it says. It says, a surfer hopes to catch a big wave. The bigger the wave, the greater the danger, but the longer the ride. Karma is very similar. Intense times wake us up and force us into the present moment to confront what is real and true, sometimes very quickly. So right now it's like a big wave, and the big wave is kind of scary and it gives big emotions and intensity, but it also takes you further really fast. And if you're here to try to grow spiritually, if you're here to try to know the nature of the self authentically, then that's what you wait for. This is what a surfer is waiting for. He's not out there surfing so he can just kind of paddle around on his board a little bit. He's here to catch a big wave and like, yeah, here comes a big one. Whoa. And he'll ride it. So ride it, surf that wave now. You're not always going to get the big wave. You're not always going to get the chance. And as we say, you know, as people are saying, it's intense, but it's, you know, but it's how you use it. And a lot of hostility in the air. Absolutely, of course. Man, here in the US, you know, I haven't been talking about the politics, but it's intense. We've been seeing things that we've never seen. Our president is like coming unhinged, like threatening war with every country. He goes to meet with our allies and insults them and attacks them, attacking Angela Merkel and Theresa May in England and these protests. And then he goes and disavows like the intelligence community that's been gathering evidence of an attack on our country. And it's just like, there's so much contentiousness. And people are like, my God, what is going on here? And then over the week, and then back and forth changing his mind, like I believe Russia hacked. I don't believe they hacked. I believe it's a witch hunt. It's this, it's that. Back, like, and everyone just like, my God, what is happening here? Frustrating that you then see people apologists for it. Other people furious. So again, it's like, okay, the world is just crazy, and it's always been crazy, and it's always going to be crazy. That's always been the nature of the world. But besides the politics part, the part that also makes people angry and frustrated, like with myself, I don't care about the personalities. It's the policies. It's the things that you see people, not just people, but stripping away environmental protections that's going to pollute water and hurt individuals, and giving money to rich, you know, to the most wealthy, and taking away people's rights. And I mean, I'm a white man, so I benefit from all the crap that's going on here in this country, but I don't want it. I'm doing fine enough, you know? So again, it's kind of like, these are the things we can get sucked into the form of what's happening and lose the essence of what underneath it all. We have to show up. We have to speak truth to power, but we have to remember the true power. We have to remember the true nature of what's underneath it all, and that even though it doesn't look like it, it's all working out in accordance to divine energy. And that accordance to, and that divine energy might mean that, you know, this is the dude that's come to like blow up the freaking world. I mean, who knows? If and when that happens, we'll be on another world. The nature of the self is imperishable. It's not of this world. You're not of this world. And again, this is why in Vedic astrology, it says Lord Vishnu has incarnated as Janardhan. Janardhan means to help us awaken from the illusion of birth. It's a very deep concept. You want to understand what astrology is. You want to understand that the planets are the facets of Lord Vishnu. He's taken this form as the grahas to help us awaken from the illusion of birth. So this illusion of birth is the fundamental problem that we all have, which is exactly what Arjuna said to, or what Krishna said to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. And the planets are the different facets of our consciousness. Mars is transforming that frustration and anger to want to change the external world into transforming the internal world. And you see that once people become enlightened, once spiritual people become truly enlightened, then they become, they fight the external world as well, but they fight without attachment. Just like Krishna says to Arjuna, go fight, get out there and fight, but don't be attached. Stay attached to the Lord. Stay attached to the truth, not attached to your version of the way it should be and the idiots that just don't understand and these all that stuff that we get into. I do it too, as you've probably seen. So again, we see that this upcoming eclipse, you see July 27th, that's when we have it. But this is the eclipse season. And again, you know, people want to focus on the event itself. The event is important, but what's more important to understand is the cycle, is the energetic cycle that we're in, right? And I'm talking a lot about this end of this Capricorn, this Mars in Capricorn, because that's where the moon is going to be eclipsed. And again, as we get closer to that, we have, you know, we will see more of this energy in our life. It will be more exacerbated. So I see there's a few questions here. Yeah, Mahina Lakai asked about the Mars close to the Earth. Yeah, we're definitely it's very powerful because Mars is so close to the Earth now, and this it's closer than it's been in quite a while. And so again, when planets are so close, they have much more impact. So I'm also letting you know here that you can get the forecast for your sign. I just entered the link here, the Astrology Training Lab. I also do the forecast for each of the 12 signs because, again, this sign of Capricorn over here, you know, this sign of Capricorn is, if you're, you know, if you're a Leo person, then, you know, the sign of Capricorn falls in your 6th house. So this lunar eclipse has a 6th house quality for you. If you're Taurus, this lunar eclipse is the 9th house, and this whole 9th house explodes. So these things are really incredibly important to understanding how these things really work, and the, you know, to personalize this for you, for all of us. Everything really revolves around the houses and where these houses fall from your sidereal ascendant. You know, if you're Aries, it's happening in your 10th house. So it's very much a career kind of pressure that you're feeling. For me, I'm Gemini, so it's actually happening in my 8th house. There's a whole lot of things just on every level kind of changing and transforming and really facing, you know, death and just transformation in general, facing a lot of those fears and vulnerabilities. It's been a big time of that shifting for me because as Gemini, this is happening in my 8th house, which is fear, vulnerability, change, transformation, and having the courage to just go, okay, and to reacquaint myself with that, oh yeah, that's right, nothing is real here. Nothing is permanent. So just facing the nature of impermanence. And these things are really important now. And so let's see, there's quite a few questions. So Dave said, what's the difference between lunar eclipse, like it was coming next few days where the moon is eclipsed by Ketu, versus solar eclipse where the sun is eclipsed by Rahu? Well, of course, the most important is the signs and the luminaries. I mean, when you say what is the difference, you have several things that are different. So one is this. The last one we did was the sun eclipsed in Gemini. So it's the sun, first of all, that's getting eclipsed, which is the light and the power. When the moon is eclipsed, it's our feeling, our emotional state. It's why one reason I'm talking a lot about meditation and stuff is a lot of that is what the moon is about. And lunar eclipses are much more emotional and psychological because that's what the moon is. And again, it's being so influenced and dominated by Mars and Capricorn. So lunar eclipse, much more psychological in that sense. Solar eclipse has a lot to do with actions. And, we experience a lot of breakthroughs and stuff. They're both very spiritual, but just in different ways. And, we're going to have another partial solar eclipse on August 11th, with the sun in Cancer. And again, so the sun, and again, it happens when sun and moon come together. Okay. So it's also that initiation of that cycle. So we just initiated back on July 12th, we initiated the Gemini cycle. So we're still in the Gemini cycle because sun and moon came together, and that was a partial solar eclipse related to Gemini themes. Then we have the lunar eclipse, which is the moon in the mind in Capricorn, in the 8th from it. Then we're going to have the next solar eclipse in Cancer, right? So again, then that's initiating the Cancer cycle, but it's initiating the 30-day cycle because it's when sun and moon come together. So every 30 days, we have the sun-moon cycle initiate. We have that new moon cycle. But when it joins the lunar node, we have an eclipse because then sun and moon come together in the same plane as the Earth. And that's what the eclipse is, when all three luminaries line up in the space at the same time and in that same trajectory. And so, So just looking there, thanks for the reminder, Gemini ascendants, how this eclipse will feel like it's killing us. Yeah, it's killing that. Well, see, and here's the thing to understand, and this is the sort of deeper kind of baseball, is the 8th house is actually considered neutral. It's a neutral house. It's a cruel house. I mean, or it's difficult. It's called Dushtana. It's Dushtana, which is hard to bear, but it's not malefic. So the 8th and the 12th houses are two Dushtana houses, but they're not cruel. The cruel houses are 3, 6, and 11. Those are the three houses that create attachment and pain. The 3rd house, which is the ego, 6th house, which is fighting and attachment to the fight, and 11th house, which is ambition. This creates a lot of attachment that leads to a lot of pain. The 8th and 12th houses actually liberate us. They destroy things. And what they destroy are all of those things that we gather in the cruel houses. And what they do is they destroy and therefore transform our existence and show us the truth. But it's painful because we have a lot of delusion, because we're delusional. And we think, oh, this ego is me. I'm going to do all this stuff. And we create a lot of pain through the ego and suffering. And then the 6th house says, I'm going to fight and win this thing. and we get something, and then it gets destroyed by the 8th house. And we get humbled because we realize it doesn't matter what I win. I have no control over anything. And then we lose it in the 12th house, or it gets taken away from us, or our secrets get exposed in the 12th house. This is what's happening to the president now. This is what's happening to the president right now. Here's his chart, and these eclipses are happening in his 12th house. This is a chart of the president. All those eclipses are happening in his 12th house. Here's his ascendant right here, and he's getting eclipses in his 12th and his 6th houses. So the 6th house, which is enemies that we fight with, his enemies are really strong now. They're really powerful now. They're just descending on him. They're just blowing him up all over the place. And his secrets are coming out. And he's terrified that his secrets are going to come out because he's got 2 planets in the 12th house, which are secrets, not telling the truth. And opposite of that is the 6th house, which is all the enemies. And this Mars, K2, all of that's there, just like boom. So again, if we have a lot of attachment, then the 6th and 12th house especially can be really difficult and painful. And the 8th house is the 8th and the 12th houses are both liberating. They both liberate us, but we wind up losing things. And when we lose something, because we were attached to it, it feels like loss. But anything that we lose, or anything we can lose, we've never had. You can't lose anything that's real. It's not possible. You can only lose what's unreal. So anything that you can lose, or that can be taken away, or that can get destroyed, was not real. It was a product, of your attachment. You were attached to something that you thought was real, and you were trying to hold on to it. But you have no control. It can get taken away at any moment, and it will get taken away when you die. And there's an awareness of this, but we try to avoid it. So this loss and destruction, loss is 12th house, destruction is 8th house. These things feel very hard for us, but they're not cruel. And in fact, the 8th house and the 12th house are often ruled by the same planets that give wisdom. They're often ruled by a Dharma planet, especially for all of the masculine signs. The 8th and the 12th house rulers also rule Dharma houses. So this is why for Gemini, the 8th house is actually very dharmic for them, because the same planet rules the 9th house. So Gemini, and you can see this very simply in the fact that Gemini is fine with not having control. See, the thing with the 8th house is we want control. Gemini is fine with, I don't have any control. Okay, I don't have any control. Gemini is not trying to control things. They have a very dharmic relationship, a lot of wisdom as it relates to 8th house things. Because the planet that rules the 8th house, Saturn, also rules the 9th house. In fact, with Gemini, often it's hard to get them to commit and stay focused and take some control, often. Right? And so, again, you have to look at everything systematically. But the 8th house is not necessarily difficult. It can be very liberating. It's one of the moksha houses, 4, 8, and 12. So, and yes, all of the masculine signs have that. All of the house rulers for all the masculine signs. The Dharma houses also rule moksha houses. So I'm not going to try to explain. If you don't understand, then that's okay. I don't say everything so everyone can understand. I've said it very clearly. So what you would need to do, I'm saying this to Jahit, is actually get some of my free classes and study a little bit more what Dharma, Moksha, Artha, Kama, Dushtana, what those things mean. They're pretty basic Vedic astrology concepts. So I have a lot of free classes that you can get, and you can get them even when you, I'm going to do this one more time, when you sign up for the Astrology Training Lab. When you do that, I have 8 hours of free classes, and the first section of those classes teach the basics of Jyotish. I mean, the basics in a very deep way. So you will understand all of that. And that would be also beneficial because you get daily forecasts, and you also get to see how this eclipse will play out for you, and based on your sign. So I guess at that, no, we had some people that are just trying to be critical. Okay. So anyway, we'll just leave it at that, and I hope you have a good day, good couple of days, and try to try to do your spiritual practices and be relaxed. So V Bravo said that you mentioned how this would affect the Capricorn ascendant. So as I said, if you want to know how this affects all the different signs, then you can just join the Astrology Training Lab, where I talk about that. I talk about that for all of the 12 signs. And good, Luminary Jane just got in. Good. Yeah, so you'll see it's also, daily forecasts. And the forecasts are really, they're based on what's called Panchanga, which is the Vedic timekeeping. The Vedic timekeeping methods that have to do with nakshatra, tithi, like for instance, today it was July 23rd, it was Monday, ruled by the moon, the sign was Scorpio, the nakshatra was Jyeshta, and it's the 12th tithi. And so it's an overview every day of the energy that's happening. So I've been doing these for about 10 years, and daily forecast is definitely the best way to learn astrology. And you could check that out, only 50 cents. And you also will see how this eclipse will influence you. And you also get like 8 hours of classes, free classes that I give you, and a chart reading template and all kinds of stuff. Just check out the link, and we'll take it from there. So thanks everyone for hanging out, at least those of you who were cool. Couple trolls, sad people do that, but whatever. And you all can check that out or be in touch if you like, and we'll teach you some astrology. I have a lot of courses and stuff too for students at all levels. So take care. Bye-bye.